Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, infants, fetuses. You get the point. I just hope that my general audience is people. Thank you for taking time out of your day, night, morning, afternoon, whatever the time of day that it must be that you're watching this. I'm not sure if I said that right. But anyways, I'm here to talk to you about a movie. One movie that was simply just the worst piece of crap I've ever seen. Next to the Blair Witch Project. But anyways, that's beside the point. The point we're trying to make here is the movie that I watched last night. It goes by the name of Paranormal Activity. Now, I read about, that this was obviously the scariest movie ever. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that we were all lied to. And that we should sue, but we're not gonna, because that film was only like 15 grand. I mean, sure, that's 15 grand more than I have, but what's the point? What is the point? But anyways, this is a spoiler alert. I want you to watch this video, because what you're about to watch and listen to is probably actually better than the movie itself. Allow me to start. I'm going to put it as short as I can. Okay. So there's this young couple. They've been seeing each other for 3 years now. Katie, the female in the relationship, not the male. You probably couldn't have guessed that with a name like Katie. Has actually experienced paranormal activity. Wow, what a coincidence. The name of the movie. Throughout her entire life. Whom she believes is actually probably the same essence. I think that was the wrong term. That has been following her whole life ever since she was such a young girl. So, her boyfriend, Mika, decides to set up a camera in which would roll every night while they sleep to catch anything that may mess with them. And they do catch a few things. Now, some of these things weren't that interesting. I'm going to get to them. But first, okay, so the first 30 minutes is them just walking throughout their house being total idiots, talking about stuff that has no relation to the movie in any way whatsoever, shape, form, fashion. It just didn't have anything to do. It pissed me off, really. Anyways, back to the, So finally, after a while, Mika's sitting there playing guitar, Katie's doing her girl thing, and then Katie's like, "Oh, what's that?" And so he grabs the camera, and they go in the kitchen to see what the noise was. Oh, by God, it was the dang ice maker. So I just knocked out about the first 30 minutes of the movie. And so, night one, they're sitting there in the middle of the night, and all you hear are a few thumps, and I think you see a light turn on. That's night one. Okay, and that entire clip of night one was about 10 minutes. I just explained it in about 10 seconds or less. So, Paramount Pictures, you are terrible. Anyways, back to the movie. So, the night after that, they're listening over the footage, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this stuff, we're being haunted by demons." And they call a doctor. I can't recall the doctor's name, you're just going to have to go look it up. And he comes in, and he's like, "Well yeah, there's definitely something here, I'm going to need to ask a few questions." Well, Katie explains to him that she's been haunted ever since she was a little kid, that kind of thing. And so he's like, "Well, I recommend that you call a demonologist." And so the psychic leaves, and then Katie's like, "Oh, you were so rude to him." And Mika's like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." And then that night they wake up and they wake up and they hear a scream, and that right there was actually pretty interesting. It was the only interesting part in the entire movie. And after that, Mika goes to see what it was. Oh wait, yeah, Mika goes to see what it was, and there's nothing there. And of course, so there you go. And the very next day, they're arguing, I want to call the demonologist and that kind of thing. And, but then he's like, okay, tell you what, I'll call the demonologist if it gets worse, okay? And so they're like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I love you. And anyways, back, and then then Katie has her little friend over, and so I could be wrong, but I think I left something out. I think the door closed and opened up, or it moved. And they were reviewing that footage with her friend, Katie's friend. And they were like, oh my God, there's no wind or anything. Nothing's moving. That obviously is a demon. Anyways, back to the movie. Anyways, night, I'm not sure what night this is, but so in this night you get about 10 minutes of Katie standing up and looking at Mika. That's it. That's all you see. Anyways, back to the act. And the day after that, he's like, and then she goes and she leaves the room. And Mika wakes up and he's like, oh, Katie, where are you? And he goes looking for her, and she's in the backyard sitting on the swing. And then the next morning, they're like, oh, I don't remember getting up. I don't remember getting on the swing. What are you talking about? Was I talking to you? So, that happens. So Mika decides to do a little EVP session. All he finds is a little grunt, and that's it. And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to buy a Ouija board. Ouija board would be a good idea since he wants to contact. And so he borrows a Ouija board from his friend, and they get in a big fight about that. And he leaves the camera rolling, and they leave the house arguing. And it does just a little clip, which I did. That's one other thing that I found interesting, was when the little thingy on the Ouija board started moving around and it lit on fire. It was pretty cool actually, but pretty good special effects. But that was one of two interesting things. Well, one of three, and I'll get to the third one later. Interesting things that happened in that movie. And we move on. And anyways, he's like, whoa, that's weird. That shouldn't light on fire like that. And why does this Ouija board look so funny? I better find out what it says. So he ends up finding out that it says something like, goodbye Diane. And they get in a big fight about that. And the next night, Katie gets dragged out of her bed and the door slams. And Mika rushes to get her, and he drags her back, and they're scared. That kind of thing. So Mika decides he wants to pour some talcum powder in the halls to catch some footprints. Which, it's not a bad idea, but still, this movie's a piece of crap. Anyways, moving on. So they actually do find some footprints. Some very weird looking footprints. And so Micah's like, well, there's no footprints moving. There's footprints coming in, but none moving out. So he goes up in the attic, and he finds a picture of Katie when he was a little kid. Or when she was a little kid. And she's like, and it was burnt on the edges. Which is weird, because Katie's house, that picture was in her old house when it burnt down. And she was very confused and very scared. And they had just moved in that house, and she hadn't seen the picture in 15 years. And so I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. This might get good. I was incorrect, by the way. Anyways, later, Katie's getting scared and stuff, and they're crying, and they find a picture in their hallway of them two, and it had been hit or punched or something. And turns out it was Micah's face that had been hurt, not Katie's. And there was a scratch on it and everything. And now it gets very confusing. Later he gets on the internet, and he's like, look at this, I just found a girl named Diane. Ooh, Diane, like on the Ouija board. That had the same experiences that you did. And so they keep the camera rolling. And, one second, I'm trying to think back in case oh yeah, he keeps the camera rolling, and he goes back to Katie, and she's talking to her friend again, and they invite the doctor back over. And the doctor, because the demonologist is out of town. And the doctor comes in immediately, and he's like, okay, I gotta leave, I'm so sorry, but this thing is not very happy with me being here. And so he leaves, and they get pissed off, and later it shows footage of Katie holding a crucifix very tightly in her hand, so tightly that it punctures her skin, and she begins to bleed. Wait. Okay, sorry. And she begins to bleed. So, Mika burns both the crucifix and the picture. And probably wasn't a good idea. And so later the next night, this is the last night, you see Katie get up, and you see her walk out of the hall, stare at Micah for another 20 minutes, get up and leave the hallway. Later you hear her scream after about 30 seconds. Mika runs out there to see what the heck's going on, and it all stops. And then after about 45 seconds of no noise, after about 45 seconds of hearing footsteps, you see Mika's body violently thrown at the camera, and he's dead. And you see Katie standing in the doorway with her blood soaked in clothes, or her clothes soaked in blood. And she gets on the ground and sniffs Micah, and then she looks at the camera with a devious smile, kind of a little devious smile, and then she lunges towards it with a demonic face. And the movie ends. Movie ends right then. So there you go. I just saved you an hour and a half of your well-earned time. Thank you for watching this spoiler alert.